Welcome. Glad you're joining us for our Seniors Living Smarter seminar or webinar, Senior Living, What's It All About? I'm Virginia Lazenby, Certified Senior Downsizing Coach and Realtor. I'm the founder and the host of the Seniors Living Smarter seminars. We've been doing these for 6 years and have really enjoyed the opportunity to bring valuable information to seniors and their families. We're very committed to helping seniors be prepared. The mission that we have identified for our seminars is to educate, equip, and inspire seniors to make informed choices and empowered decisions regarding their lifestyle. We have a variety of topics, and we're glad to have you with us for this topic. This is very much an educational seminar, and so we are very committed to that. Over the years, we have had sponsors to join us who share our commitment to providing education for seniors. It's not a marketing, it's to build information. And yes, we'd love to meet with you and see how we might be able to work together to really make you help people feel more confident about their future. We're going to start with introducing our sponsors today, as again, they share the commitment to education and great resources for you to turn to for ones who can meet your needs or provide services you're needing. Our first sponsor couldn't be with us today, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. It's Will Boughton, who is with Vera Bank, and he is their wealth management advisor. And as they talk about what Vera Bank's wealth management is, a fiduciary providing financial and estate planning, trusteeship, executorship, and investment management with a truly local touch. So if you are in need or need guidance for estate planning, financial investments, and so on, here's a great person to go to, and you will be meeting Will on other webinars. Um, our next sponsor is Howard Polanski with Silver Key Benefits. Howard, welcome and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Howard Polanski with Silver Key Benefits. My business partner, Steve Dukovic, and I help those in the Central Texas area and throughout the state, people who are going from the working world to the non-working world. And what that includes is Medicare. How the heck does it work? And we help filter all of the noise to figure out what is the best plan for you. The two things I want you to take away from today is, as you see this recording, if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, you have until April 1st to change in case you are not seeing the doctors you normally see, because they may not have the same contracts as they did in 2020, or some of your drugs may cost a lot more than you thought this year, just in terms of pharmacies and formularies. If you have a Medicare supplement, you can always change that at any time of the year. You do not have to wait from October 15th to December 7th. That is technically an optional policy. So if you think that you are spending too much on the premium for that, give us a call. We can go through the application, see if we can save you several $100s a year. Thank you so much, Virginia.
Thanks, Howard. And as we know, if we need some clarification about our insurance, there's a lot of confusion about long-term care, how it relates to housing and living options and Medicare, but Howard is a great resource to check base with him about that. Our next sponsor is Stacy Scarborough with Visiting Angels. Welcome, Stacy. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Stacy Scarborough with Visiting Angels. We provide home care in Georgetown. I think a great benefit for our services, for what you guys might be looking for when looking into a senior community, is you can utilize a caregiver not only to help your transition into the community by helping get organized, get unpacked, having that one-on-one assistance with getting to know your community, as well as in your home in the meantime. So you might be on a wait list or you're not quite ready to move into a community. You can utilize caregiver services while you're trying to figure out what's right for you. You guys can call us 24/7. Thank you so much, Virginia, for having me.
Thanks, Stacy. We appreciate you being available to our seniors, and I know you all, as others, have really done a lot of extra work during our polar vortex period to make sure the needs of your clients are met and to help caregivers get to their charges. So thanks for all you and family members do to help make that happen. And we have Christy Schuler from Wesleyan Homes. Christy, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Christy Schuler, and I'm Community Relations for the Wesleyan in Georgetown, Texas. We provide a full continuum of care for senior living, including assisted living, independent living, skilled care, rehab, home health, and hospice. We are faith-based and not-for-profit, and we've loved serving this area, and next year will be our 60th anniversary.
And you'll be hearing more from Christy a little bit later. She's our resource person today. As I said, I'm Virginia Lazenby with Seniors Living Smarter Services. I am a certified senior downsizing coach and a realtor. With this combination, I offer full service, including move management, liquidation, property preparation, and the marketing and selling of your existing property. So our team reduces the stress by being a one-stop shop to take care of all of your needs during this transition. And we really want to be able to support you to live a fulfilled, active, meaningful life as you transition to the environment that will be most supportive to you. So today's topic, senior living, what's it all about? Gone are those days when we would put someone in a home. I remember as a child hearing people talk about putting my grandmother in a home, putting an elderly aunt in a home, and those days have certainly changed. We have much more choice now, and indeed it is about choice. And some of our preconceived notions about homes are based on what we remember as children, but a lot has changed. And that's what we want to explore today. All of this, as I said, involves choice. And if you choose to have your family or children or a stranger as a discharged nurse to make your decision about where your next days would be, then that is your choice. But we hope you'll really be more proactive, and this is an important step towards this. The making a choice is not by ads on TV. It's not what we see in social media. It may not be from our friends. We're all different. What's right for one person may not be right for another person. And so this seminar series is about that. We want to be able to help you gain information, answer your questions, help you work through solutions to your possible challenges, and encourage you in facing the next chapter of your life. As a licensed real estate agent of 18 years and a certified senior downsizing coach, I often get questions from clients, friends, and relatives. How do we untangle this complex web of information about senior living options? So that's our goal this morning, to help you figure this out. In talking with people about this topic, people always want to know, what is the difference in independent living, assisted living, and so on. And we will be reviewing that. But there's also another question lurking there in the background, and that's the decision-making journey. It's the behavioral part of all of this. And what we're really talking about is change, stages of change. And often that's the elephant in the room. But today we hope we'll help you think through where you are, what you want to, where you want to be, and be informed about that. So as I said, I've invited Christy Schuler with Wesleyan Homes to be our resource person today. Christy not only has extensive knowledge of the variety of senior living options, but she brings a vast amount of experience in working with seniors and their families in relocating to senior communities. So as is our usual format, after our time together when Christy and I will be sharing information. Then we will open it up for questions and answers, and you can raise your hand electronically, and we'll call on you so we can respond to your particular question. So along the time, save those questions so you'll be ready when we do have our question and answer period. So Christy, let's get started. Itself, this is not a marketing spiel for Wesleyan Pursuit. So we'll have a dialogue, and then, as is the format for our webinars, we'll open the floor for questions from the floor. People can raise their hands for questions or to share their thoughts or responses. And so we'll come back to that. It's harder right now, or it has been harder. It's going to be, COVID made a big difference. And we see things hopefully opening up a little bit more. And I was thinking today about our date, February 25th. If I remember correctly, that was our last field trip. We used to offer field trips to communities. And so we had our field trip to Lakeline Oaks, a resort lifestyle community over near Lakeline Mall. And we had a group going over that day. I had a very bad cough. Supposedly was not COVID, but I didn't join the group. But I know Strayers are on the call. I think they went, Virginia Reed, Kathy Rice. And so I hope to resume those field trips. It was a good time for people to learn more about the communities. So we are going to do our quick overview of the communities. And then we're really going to focus about the communities on independent living, because that's really the one where people make the choice. So are we able to get that screen up, Jeff, to show our communities, the different types? Great, yes. Okay, thank you. So this is sort of our standard list. A lot of you are very familiar with one or more, but we're just going to right now do a basic description of them. So what we're hearing a lot about these days are 55 plus active adult communities. That would be like Sun City. And I know many of you already live there, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but the hallmark there is generally these are smaller homes, less yard, and a variety of amenities. Enjoy that lifestyle from golf to ceramics to photography to woodworking to nature and so on. So those are usually some of these communities have more amenities, such as Sun City here does. Some have less, but there is a focus on that. In the last few years, we've seen more of the 55 plus apartments becoming popular or as an option for people. So with the 55 plus apartments, it's maintenance free. You don't have to worry about are your pipes breaking, or if they do, be responsible. Someone else is taking care of that for you. It is for active adults or 55 plus. You won't have children running down the halls if that's a concern. For the 55 plus apartments, they're very secure. I was talking with a woman last night who had moved in.
I know if I reschedule this one, then I have to reschedule everything, and I just didn't feel like doing that.
Okay, you need to figure out about muting somebody. Anyway, it always surprises. That's great. But how secure she felt in her 55 plus community. And there are activities planned for our seniors. It's not as specific as what we see in independent living. You probably don't have a more of a coordinator of the activities, but they are designed for that. So we're going to come back to independent in just a minute. Can we just go back one screen? Okay, great. So then we do have independent living. Don't leave yet. We're going to come back to that discussion, but for more in depth. These are active communities. When you'll hear us say a lot today, oh, I'm not ready for that. Well, independent living is very active, and you'll learn more about that. Then we have the assisted living communities for people who need a little bit more assistance with the activities of daily living, maybe with medication, just getting up and going in the mornings or ready for bed in the evenings. But that's what we see often in our assisted living communities, and different levels of care can be provided. And of course, we're seeing more and more memory care for people, Alzheimer's or dementia, different kinds of things going on there. Now, all of those independent assisted memory care, we see them offered together in some communities, different areas. We some are independent, so you see freestanding assisted living. Often with that assisted living, there's a wing secure for memory care, but we also see the standalone memory care communities. And we're seeing personal care or residential care homes. These are much more of a home setting. They're licensed, I think usually up to about 12. It depends on the size and what they're licensed for. Generally, it's assisted living. We're seeing more memory care being provided through those kinds of settings. And for some people, that's the ideal, where I just don't want to be in a big area. I want to be in a smaller home-like setting. So, well, that's a consideration. And then, of course, our skilled nursing, which would be closer to what our nursing homes were back years ago when we had grandmother there or whatever. And the CCRCs. Now, that's something that I just want to highlight real briefly right now. CCRCs are continuing care retirement communities. And what that means is they offer independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, all together, all in on a campus. And the true CCRCs, there is a legal contract that that group is responsible. When you need assisted living, it will be available for you there. When you need memory care, should that happen. Now, we're seeing more variations on these CCRCs, but the traditional model is that residents would pay a pretty hefty enrollment fee. We often hear figures here, and Christy will pick up a little bit about this too, from 500,000 up to $1 million or more. I know you freaked out. Come back. Don't leave us yet. But what you and then you're going to pay your monthly rent. What you are gaining for people who have financial means to do this, it's a contractual agreement. You enter in independent living. That is the cost you will be paying throughout your life. Yes, there can be a small cost of living increase. But right now, if I go to independent living, I don't, am I going to be there 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, or is something going to happen and I'm going to have to move much sooner to assisted living where it's going to be a higher price? But in this type of the contractual arrangement for CCRCs, you're going to be paying that same price throughout your life. Now, we also see other kinds of life care or continuum of care, like where we have, even just here in Georgetown, Wesleyan offers all levels of care, and their residents would have priority in these areas, but it's not with that same, you have not put that large amount of money in and with that same guarantee. Forgot to mention the important part, if you are involved in those buy-in communities, generally you will get 90, your estate will get 90% of that back. Now I say generally because there's some options we're seeing more of, some depending, it's 80%, but nevertheless, and then just because people often ask, well, where are these or what are these? If you're familiar with Longhorn Village, Westminster and Austin and Carinthia, those are your true CCRCs. Buckner Villa and some others, we see variations and sometimes with new communities. we see a limited number of something similar. But anyway, just because I know people have questions about that. But now let's talk more about independent living. And so we'll look at that slide if we can see that. Okay, while that's coming up, there we go. Independent living, what are the significant hallmarks? What makes it different from 55 plus apartments or other variations? Generally, you have apartments and sometimes cottages. One of the main things is you have a meal plan. There can be variations. Is it 3 meals a day? Is it a coupon or a voucher system? But meals are provided one way or the other. And we'll talk more about that with Christy. There are a variety of amenities and organized activities. These communities are designed for seniors to, I skipped one of Christy's questions. I'll come back to you in just a minute, Christy. That was my clue right there. But we're talking about, they want people to live fulfilled lives. Generally, you have some type of transportation. It varies community, how flexible that is, but for going to doctor appointments, shopping, and so on. Generally, pets are allowed. Now, there may be some restrictions on what area, and Christy can fill us in on that. Housekeeping is included. It's often like once a week with some type of laundry option if you choose that. There will be a range in prices. We'll talk about that with Christy, from 1 person to 2 person. These are private pay. Your long-term care insurance does not work for this. And we see a variety in the sizes of communities. So that's trying to meet people's personal desires is so important. I wanted to ask Christy, what was supposed to be her first question before I did that, was what do you see as the purpose of senior living, Christy?
Well, I think that we all have the same purpose, and it's to provide all that you would need to have an enriched and feel that you're living life to the fullest every day. And so we're trying to bring that to you so that you don't have to go out and get it, so that you're able to live life like you would when you were 25, 30 years old. We've got all of those at touch points built into the community.
Okay, and I always want people to understand that this is not the old folks' home. And for those of you who were with us on last month's webinar, when we talked about living to be 100, that being actively engaged, being stimulated, having a purpose, all of those contribute to long, healthy lives. And that's what these types of communities really focus on. So I hope people will really consider that. So after that quick introduction, or pretty quick, in the work that you do, Christy, because you're interacting with people and you've worked in this for a number of years and are quite aware of all of this, what would you say are some of the common misunderstandings or misconceptions that people have about independent living?
Well, I think you kind of touched on it already, Virginia. There's a stigma associated with senior living in general, and it's hard to get people to understand that it's not what it used to be. And so the best way to do that is to get them out to see a community. And a big misconception that I tell all of my tours when I do independent living, especially, is that people have a sense of identity and independence that's connected to their home. But in actuality, as you age, you don't get out as much. The maintenance of the house becomes crippling for some people. And so we allow you in an independent living setting to not have to worry about any of those things and actually be more independent and experience things that you used to experience when you were going out and, playing cards, meeting people for dinner. That's why organizations have dining venues and different things that you can go to without ever having to leave the campus.
I think you made a really important point about independence. In fact, for some of you who are with us, I think it was in February of 2020, it was how much independent or how much freedom do I give up with independent living? And we had a panel of residents from different communities. And overwhelming. I haven't given up any freedom. I have more independence. I have more freedom. I'm not having to worry about home maintenance. I'm not having to worry about that. And so I always think of a story of a woman I was visiting with several years ago. She was ready to move from her home to an independent living community. She would tell me, well, first she wasn't ready, just not ready for that, which we hear a lot. She said, but it's really lonely here. When my husband and I used to have our glass of wine at 5, and now I'm really lonely. But I can't give up my independence. But I haven't been out of my house.
Right.
So I think that's just a story about what Christy is alluding to there. Okay, some things that I hear, and you get to be my informant here. People will say there are too many walkers and scooters and wheelchairs. That is depressing. I'm not going to live there. So, a couple points I want you to help us understand. First, what are the requirements for someone to live an independent? How mobile do they have to be? Are there any limitations? What's the word there?
So as far as requirements, they're really it is truly independent living. So independent living does not have any ancillary services. We don't have nurses on staff. We don't have doctors. We really, our expectation and your expectation should be that you can function in that room and do everything that you need to do. And if it takes a walker to get down the hallway or a scooter, you're still maintaining independence. It's the individuals that have the stigma that can't get past it, that I'm never going to use a cane, I'm never going to use a walker. I literally was on a tour a couple of weeks ago, Virginia, and I had to catch a man from falling while we were touring, and it was in independent living. And I said, would you consider using a cane? Do you want me to get a wheelchair? And he said, I'd rather fall. And so what happens when you fall? What or how independent are you after that? So I think that we are all kind of against what it looks like until we actually need it. And I'm in my 40s and I don't feel like I'm in my 40s, and my expectation is as I age I'm not going to feel my age, so we never really feel like we're old or we need help. But those things are things that can help us be more independent and do what we want to do and go where we want to go without having to ask for help.
Absolutely. I just we've talked about this too. I chuckle when people, they just think that represents that people are declining. They just may have mobility issues. And I have a friend who happens to be at the Wesleyan, moved over there around Thanksgiving. Very active, very sharp. Yes, he uses a scooter for health reasons, but does not slowing down. I want to know if this would have been a great raise hand or poll time. How many of you went down to San Marcos, I think it was Wednesday night or Tuesday night, for the Georgetown High School girls playoff game? Now, this gentleman is in his motorized cart. He is an avid supporter of girls sports with Georgetown High School. And you don't ever want to get in his way if you happen to be going into the Wesleyan and he is on his way to a game. Do not get in his way. He's out to go. And again, there's someone who's very active. It's a good environment for him to be in should he fall or need assistance. Much easier there than in his own home. But so, and one thing that people, but so they just so people can get around you don't have specific limitations for people who can move into independent living. Okay. Um, okay. Then I hear the comment, the hallways are too long. I am not going to walk that far from my apartment to the dining room. Right now, you don't have to worry about it because COVID, but we hope that will soon be changing and you will have that need to walk, or there are other options. But Christy, what's your response to this one about those hallways are too long? I'm not walking that far.
Some of the hallways are long, and I don't think that's a misconception, but that's your exercise. If you think of your apartment as being your room and the building being your home, you walk around your house now. It's a great way to get exercise without really going to the gym and doing things like that. And much like we all live in the local area. We all live in Georgetown. We don't go all over Georgetown every day. So you're not going to go everywhere around the building in a day unless you want to. And almost all buildings are designed with the meeting places and the communal places to be at points near an elevator or very easily accessible from any apartment in the building. So you really don't have to walk down that long hallway unless you want to, because you're going to be able to get to what you want to participate in pretty easily.
Okay. And I think that's one of the questions we hear. Oh, there are just too many people. It's too big. But as you're saying, you have your kind of neighborhood within there. And well, yeah, go ahead. 'Cause there are different sizes of communities, different population counts and so on. But what else would you say when people say those are just too big? I don't want to be there.
Well, I mean, I think there's an adjustment. It depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to somebody that's lived out in the country for 60 years and they're not a townie, it is going to be a change. But, and I think I've shared this with you before, the number one determinant factor on how long you'll live is not your health, it's how much you socialize. And that blew me out of the water when I learned that statistic. And socialization looks different for everybody. We have residents that maybe all they do is read the paper in the lobby and say hi to a couple of people a day. We have residents that participate in pretty much everything they can and also help run the community. And so when I say that, they're delivering mail, they're volunteering to do whatever. So I think it really is a societal view of where are you now? How much do you participate now? You can gauge that with how many people you would be around in a building.
Mhm. And I want to add in here, we're kind of picking on the Wesleyan, but these are true throughout independent living.
Absolutely.
You know, because here in Georgetown, we have the Wesleyan, we have the Delaney, we have the Oaks. We have two new ones coming in and probably some others along the way. Grand Living will be opening later this summer or so on. And Hacienda will be coming on board next year, I believe it is. There's such a need for these communities, and there's a need for people to be informed. Um, this week, well, our friend Will helps us with this one too. But when people say, you know, these are just too expensive, I can live in my own home for a lot less money. Thoughts on that, Christy?
Well, I think that you have to, we actually have a cost comparison worksheet that we share with people about how much you're spending to maintain a home versus what you would spend in independent living. And so all communities are different, but we all pretty much offer the same thing. And that's why, and I know colleagues of mine at other communities say the same thing. We want people to experience and tour as many communities as they can because you'll get a feeling for them. And within that, pretty much everything's taken care of. Like you had mentioned earlier, the meal plans, the electricity, the maintenance, transportation, things that you're paying out of pocket for now, you won't have to pay for when you're in a community. So there is a cost savings differential there.
And that's something that people can help you do an analysis of to see, and if you're going to remain in your own home, and if something should occur and you need 24-hour care, that amounts up very fast too. We're glad it's available, but so there are lots of cost factors that we could help people think more about that too. And of course, this year we've had the concerns about COVID. So, Christy, could you talk to us a little bit how generally COVID has impacted senior communities? I know we've all heard lots of rumors. Some are probably accurate representations. Some, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that people aren't aware of. But talk to us a little bit about, or even Wesleyans in particular, but in general, how have communities responded to COVID? Here's the bottom line. Have their residents actually been locked in their apartment since last March and only get their food brought to them, and that's it, and they can't move out of their apartments?
So let's just focus on the independent living aspect of it. There are, especially when I think COVID negatively impacted everybody, but I think that much like Texans in general do, we can take a negative and turn it into a good thing. So in independent living, we absolutely did not lock our residents in the building. Again, let's revert back to it is independent. So it really is an apartment complex for all intents and purposes that provide amenities, right? So our residents were able to come and go as they pleased. Do we have precautions if they leave? Absolutely. We have temperature checks, information that they need to fill out just so that we could track if we did have a positive COVID case. Was it negative in the beginning? Maybe a little bit, but there were a lot of things. I'm going to be completely transparent. It was scary for everybody, I think, in the country, but we were able to mobilize and get the type of equipment to protect us from it. I'm talking masks, PPE, testing, vaccinations. Being in a hub like a community like the Wesleyan or others around the area, we're able to bring things to you. So there was the fear of people going to the grocery store. We actually had a deal worked out with HEB. I know people can get their groceries delivered at home, but we had a specific deal with them. So we were able to bring things to community members that were afraid to go out. So much like the United States, we have some that didn't skip a beat, and we have some that were very precautious and took it very seriously from day one. And you've got to look at it from the standpoint of necessities are handled for you in a community. You don't have to go out and get things because we're going to bring them to you. And we have the ability to bring in medical care too if we need to. Whereas if you're in your home by yourself, that's not going to be as readily available because you have an avenue like the Wesleyan referral system. And we did have and still do have very strict infection control policies, meaning people coming in and out of the community are screened, even if they're coming just to visit their loved one. And so we know who's been in the building, who hasn't. And that behind the scenes, as you mentioned, was a large operational cost at our end and for many in the industry. But the major factor for me that I like to talk about is we were able to safely help people socialize. So we've all heard it in the news. We've seen it where people are suffering from loneliness, suicide rates are up. When you're in a community like the Wesleyan, we're all under the impression and understanding that if you're going to leave your apartment, you need to have a mask on. You need to safely socially distance. But in the same respect, we're still holding group activities. Is the group 10 instead of 50? Absolutely. But you're able to see people safely. Whereas if you're in your home, I talk to people, well, I go play bridge. I play cards with my neighbor down the street. Yes, but when was the last time you did that? Well, it's been since before March. So, I mean, this is something we're living with now, and we need to understand we're not going to go back to the old normal real quickly, if ever, right? So we've made an adjustment to still keep that socialization and keep that vibrancy in people's lives on a daily basis.
And we really have to appreciate the safety precautions. I know I've been down recently to the Enclave at Round Rock several times, and prior to that, the Enclave at Cedar Park, because I had real estate clients who'd moved there and I was taking in papers to sign. And so I would go through the protocol there to enter the building. I have to fill out the contact information, my email and phone. So should there be a problem, they could get in touch with me, have my temperature checked. Same thing I do when I go into the Wesleyan. Anyway, sometimes, well, I just want to run down to her apartment. It's really for the safety of all of us. And we have to appreciate that. And again, if we're isolated in our homes, we tend to be more isolated, but enough of that one. We hope we are moving out of this. Okay, let's turn to assisted living for a minute, Christy. Now, if people are living in a community where they have both assisted living and then assisted living, independent living and then assisted living, who makes the decision when someone moves? Do they get moved, or how does that happen?
That's a good question. And I get asked that question a lot. It kind of depends on the situation, and I'm speaking specifically to ours because our assisted living is standalone. It's not independent and assisted are not integrated. So usually people are able to recognize the fact that, and I'm going to use an acronym here, ADLs, activities of daily living, that they're having a little bit more trouble getting dressed or remembering to take that medication on time. And so there's two things that can happen. We can bring in home health or somebody like Stacy's Visiting Angels and have them help that residents stay in independent living a little bit longer. But say they have a health crisis, they fall, they break their hip, they're unable to rehab and make it back to an independent living setting. That's kind of when you know, okay, I'm it's going to cost me more to bring people in to live independently than it would for me to be in an assisted living community where those services are already built in. You already have that medication staff, that nursing staff. When I say nursing, it's different levels of assisted living. Obviously, they're not all at the same. So you can gradually progress through that.
So it's there for people who need it, but we've talked about and already alluded to this, that we're seeing people stay in independent living more longer. But I know for many people, that's one of the things they look at in communities. Does the community have these different levels?
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a priority for moving into their assisted living. I think this is a big issue. What about couples? You know, we don't all age in the same way at the same time. And so, and I know we have some people on this call today who are kind of struggling with this whole, how do we make this happen? One spouse needs more assistance than the other. From your experience, what are your words of wisdom, Christy?
So I see this a lot in couples where let's start at the independent living level, Virginia. They'll move in because they're noticing that their spouse needs more help and they make a decision to move in together. And so with independent living, you start with the meals are provided, housekeeping is provided. Those are things that you don't have to worry about since you can spend that quality time with your spouse. And graduate up to assisted living where those services are no longer adequate, and that individual, the spouse, there's one that needs more care. When it's standalone in assisted living, you can move with that spouse that has the higher level of care and just not have the need pay for the extra package for the other individual, basically. So that you'll have the help on site in an assisted living to help with your spouse so that you guys can stay together. I've seen a lot of cases where one spouse stays in independent living and one stays in assisted living, and they'll go visit the spouse during the day. So it really is an individual choice, and it's also a financial choice too, because if you split up, you're paying for two different communities. When you get into assisted living, you're going to have more of the long-term care benefits, veterans benefits that can potentially help cover the cost of that, but it is going to be significantly higher if you're in two separate communities.
Okay. As we talk about this, whether assisted living is standalone or part of a larger community, but usually, or what we've thought about generally, it would be in a separate wing or a separate building or whatever. And I know we're seeing more with some communities with the philosophy of integrating the assisted living into the independent living.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that with some new communities coming into our area, and others are promoting that with the help of, the healthcare, home care coming in. Um, any words of wisdom on that question?
I think much like selecting a community, it's an individual choice. I think there's pros and cons to each situation. So I think that, for example, my grandmother lived in one of those communities in Round Rock where she started out in independent living, did not have to leave her apartment, and assisted living services came in to care for her. But I can tell you that from her perspective, when she came in on the independent living level and was surrounded by people that were at a different care level, there was some, and I'm not uncomfortableness, I guess. It's kind of like making that choice to move to independent living is a big choice. Making that next choice to assisted living is also a big choice. And that's exactly what you want it to be. You want it to be a choice. You don't want somebody to decide that for you.
Okay. All right. So, and I'm sure people have been jotting down questions. We'll respond to questions later. But so I've heard you talk about this too, Christy, when you're giving tours or other people you know of. What seems to be holding people back? I know, and from my experience with people making the transition, that finally said, okay, this is the choice. I'm ready to move. But then they're often roadblocks. So what do you see as some of the roadblocks you have experienced with people?
I think there are several. I think the number one factor is going to be change and fear. And I think no matter what age you're at, change can be very scary. And so let's be totally transparent and honest. This is not, I'm buying a new house, I'm moving to a new neighborhood. This is a significant intellectual choice that, hey, I'm going to move to this community so that I can continue to be independent. I can continue to live in the way I want to live and make choices for myself. I also think that downsizing is a huge issue for people. People feel like their home. I read something the other day where people only spend the amount of time in their house around 600 square feet. No matter how big your house is, there's 600 square feet in everybody's home that they. So when you look at, hey, I have a home and I'm going to move into an apartment, that's a mental adjustment. That's a big deal, you know. And I think those would be my two main ones, would be the fear and the downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
But just to pad that, what I hear more often than not, I always hear, gosh, I wish I would have done this sooner. So you don't want to wait too late. And there is no book that says, okay, on the third day of September, when you're 85, you're going to move to independent living. You've got to make that choice on your own.
Right. And we often see people too, when they've decided to go and they're kind of excited about the new adventure. And you go back to your home and you see all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, how is that going to fit into my new apartment? This is too much. I can't cope. Forget it. I'm not going. And so, and we hear that a lot. Or we hear, it's going to take me a year or more to go through all of this. And for some people who still have all their business records from the last two businesses for 50 years, start now. But, you know, so because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is part of my business, is the downsizing. And just know there are professionals who can help you with that. And that's what we're here for. And I'm just becoming more and more passionate about it, having seen a couple moves recently where it was just harder than it needed to be. You know, a family with good intention was moving. Yes, they'd drawn their floor plan. They knew what furniture would fit, but they didn't think about the wall space. They didn't think about how many feet of closet space do I have and how many will I have in my new place. People arrive at the new home, their new apartment, and have so much stuff they can't move in or trip over boxes. So I'm very passionate about that we can help people with that. And so as Christy says, what we're really talking about is change. Change is very hard. I know some of you from your business careers are familiar with different versions of the trans-theoretical model. What a big word, but that's where we would often talk about change in terms of pre-contemplation, contemplation, moving on to preparation, taking action, maintenance, and relapse. Well, within the senior industry, we see this change theory manifested as what we call the stages of readiness for change. And we'll see if we can get that screen up now as we talk about, there we are, stages of readiness. And I know a lot of you have talked about this before, but you know, there's that denial. I'm not moving. I'm not going to go live with those old people. Well, that's, you can do that, you know. But I'm just staying put, and that comes up with the issue. I'm aging in place, and you know there comes a time when that may not be as a good a strategy. But nevertheless, just a quick review of these stages. Then we see people entering into the thinking, more that contemplation. Well, I wonder what it's really like. You know, I'm curious. Beginning to ask questions, beginning to compile data or resources to look at, well, what's the cost? What amenities are provided? What will I gain? Just that, and it's amazing how some people move through these very quickly and others will stay for an extended period of time. And so then as we begin to think this is something we want to do, we move more into that planning, that preparation time. when we're talking more specifically with our financial planner about, well, how can I do this? We begin to do more comparison shopping with the different communities. Fortunately, we don't all like the same thing, so there are different communities for everybody, and people need to realize it's not just what your neighbor wants. That may not be what you want. And then finally, action. Really making that decision, signing the papers, making your deposit. And so I think it's just an interesting part for us to kind of think about where we are. Now, let's see if this poll will come up. We have a fun poll for you today. Where would you place yourself? Do you see yourself as in denial? I'm not going there. I'm not going there. I really think if you're here at this webinar, you're probably already moving more into that thinking stage, even if it's a way out. Well, I might consider it. There we go. Or is it the planning? Some of you are definitely involved in the planning. Let's get the resources to help us. Who can help us with the move? Who can help us with the downsizing? We've talked about the financial aspects. And some of you are ready to take action or have taken action, or you really made that decision. You signed the contract, you paid your deposit, and you are ready to go. Okay, so host and panelists, we can't vote. But let's see if you'd be willing to, and I know we have some alumni with us today, so you're already there. You don't stress out on voting. You've already passed through all this, but for the attendees, I'd be curious if people would think, where are you today? And it was a couple were in different places too, but let's see if people will share with us. It's anonymous, so where do you think you are in this readiness for change? Let's see. Okay. People don't want to share. So is it, you can click on one of the choices? Okay. So is the poll open for people to mark, Jeff? Well, usually the polls work pretty well, but maybe this one.
Yes, they can vote.
Oh, okay. People are thinking, caught them off guard on this question. Okay. Well, this is going to be one of your homework assignments anyway for you to think about where you are in this process. But I do think it's interesting to really consider that. Okay. And then recently when I was visiting with a couple, they asked a very pointed question. So we're going to take the poll down. But they were and wanting a very specific, so that's, it always works differently. So we didn't see people vote that time, but we have 8% of our attendees deny, I'm not moving. I understand. 67% say they're in the thinking stages, which is what I would figure. That's why you're here today. And hopefully this is helping you. Some have already are a little bit more specific with the planning. And we have some people who are, yes, I do know of some who are waiting for their move to come up this spring. They already, in fact, some who have their apartments, but if you're moving to Michigan, you want to wait till it's warmer to move. So, so that's fun, but I'm glad to see we have that many people thinking about it. So thanks for doing that. The question I was asked, what is the optimum time for moving to an independent living community? And I don't know why, but that question has just rung in my ears so many times after meeting with these people. They want, and I can understand knowing their, just kind of their personality. I want a specific, when do I make this move? And unfortunately, it's a personal answer. Some things I'm going to share some and let Christy pick up too. I think the main message I want people to take away is moving sooner rather than later. So you can enjoy the lifestyle, get involved in a community before the crisis occurs. If we only knew when that crisis was going to occur, whether it be a fall, which it often is, or some other health condition, but let's get situated in our new community before that. And, but a lot of it is just, when are you ready to make a change? And we can put it off forever, and then we may end up not having a choice because that choice may be made for us. What I want to share, because I think this was an interesting part, when I had met with, I had phone visits over the last few weeks with people I've worked with for the last couple of years about making their move to these communities. And it was very interesting. I'll find it in just a minute. Their age break, we asked even, what was the age range of people? Okay, I don't see it right now, but I'll find it. I'm going to share their tips first. And this was, I talked to, I think it was a total of 12. There were 3 individuals and then 9 couples or thereabouts. But as they shared what was important to them, what pushed them, were they in a reaction mode, or were they being proactive? They just knew they wanted to do that. And often it was a combination. Maybe there'd been a little health scare that kind of moved them along. But these are some findings, and I think they're things we can all learn from. A majority of people, one of their main considerations was moving closer to family. I love the one who said she has a son 2 hours south and one 3 hours north. And so that's close proximity. They can be here soon. She doesn't have to move to the community where they are because she's very established with friends here, but she still like that. And I've had other people, I know I had several, it was interesting. Lincoln, Nebraska had a big draw this year. We had people moving back there, but that was home. That's where family was. And they were ready to be back with those roots and that support. So that's always, and I know others of you are wrestling with that, but this comes from the wisdom of people who have moved recently. Visit communities, get to know the community. And I see, I know Christy is big about this, and not just the marketing story, although I think most all of our senior counselors in these communities are transparent with people. They want it to be a good experience for their residents. But it's really helpful if you can have the opportunity to talk with people, with residents there. How do they feel about the community? What kinds of activities are going on? Yes, you see this calendar of activities pre-COVID. There were lots of activities, but did those really happen? And that was what was fun when we were doing our field trips, because we really had it set up with the communities, not just for the marketing, but for interacting with residents. So I look forward when we can resume that. I know for some people, type of community, whether it's faith-based, not-for-profit, if that's something important to you, then that's something you would look for in your community. We've already mentioned having different levels of care, independent assisted memory care. Some people felt very important that all be available. We've already talked about plan ahead, meet with your financial planner. Talked about be proactive, move before the crisis occurs. The right time to move is while you're able to enjoy, be involved. Don't wait too long. Again, these were words from people I spoke with over the last couple of weeks. Selecting your apartment. As one person, because their husband was an architect, they were very sensitive to this, not just the floor plan, but the wall space, and how is it really going to work for your furniture you hope to take with you, and art and so on. From your community, what's accessible in terms of shopping and medical, again, when we have a little bit more going out into the real world. Talked about family. This particular woman was saying she wanted to move back to Galveston. That's where they were from. They had a son there. But the thought of moving from Georgetown to Galveston was completely overwhelming. How are we going to get all this managed? Who's going to do the move? How can we get all this planning? I remember, she was at one of the webinars last year and followed up with her. That's what we can do. Let's put together a plan for you. And then it's like, I feel so much better now. The right time to move is not determined by your age, but really your situation. You know, we've already, some people, I was surprised how many of the people in this group were in their 80s when they decided to move. And, you know, they decide, okay, this is not enough. It's time for me to move on. One person had a near traffic accident and she said, I'm not driving. I don't want to have, you know, have to have my husband do all the driving. It's a time for us to move to a community. One woman was commenting about, well, she was not driving. Her husband had to do all the shopping and her mobility was pretty limited. So he was doing all the meal preparation. And, you know, she said, I just realized it's not fair. We need to be where we can be together in a community and have more of that provided for us. And I think one of the most important questions was, talking with your spouse about, if something were happening to me, would you want to be in this home by yourself to maintain the home? In this case, they had just been on one of our field trips, and that was really helpful. The wife had been working on this for 2 or 3 years or more. Husband not keen about it, but after visiting a community and not just the marketing tour, but one of the field trips where they got to interact with people, it opened a door of possibility, and then followed by the serious conversations. You know, what if something were to happen to me? So that's just a quick overview, but I hope that, you know, encourages you to do more thinking about that. But let's, before we open it up, Christy, anything else you want us to highlight before we open up for questions or people sharing?
You do an excellent job at covering everything. So I'm open to any questions people may have.
Okay, and again, it's not just about the Wesleyan, and we're not going to get into specifics, but about the industry. Oh, I know, and the last two that I wanted to share, a woman kept saying, you know, life is what you think of it. She said, yeah, extra challenges this year with this in Galveston with COVID, hurricanes, now the freeze, but you know, you roll with it, and attitude is so important. Or as another woman was sharing with me, you know, we approached it as an adventure. We've made many moves throughout our lives, and this was just one more adventure that the time is right for us to make that move. So with those words of wisdom, let's see if you have a question. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the little raise hand symbol. If you'll raise your hand for a question, or if you want to share something from your own experience, that's fine. Oh, there we go. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, could we have Christy give us a little more detail about what services are included in assisted living?
Okay.
Yes, I can. I'm actually going to pull something up to help me read to you guys. But assisted living is different than independent living in a lot of different ways, but it's also kind of similar. So amenities that are included in most assisted livings are going to be your meals, but let's couple that with direction to meals. So in assisted living, it's required by law that you provide 3 meals a day. So maybe you forget what time lunch is, you're going to have somebody that comes. And if you don't, you won't have anybody that comes. But if you do forget, you're going to have somebody that comes and says, hey, Mr. Smith, it's time for lunch. Let's go eat lunch. You're always going to have a RN or an LVN on campus. You're always going to have medication aids on campus. You're going to have the social aspect just like you do in independent living, but it's going to look different in that you may not have as many things to do. There's going to be transition guidance. So if you need extra care, you're going to have people letting you know, hey, why don't we try this service, or why don't we do this and there's kind of a routine of, we see you're doing good or not so much, so we're going to add this service in. When it comes to housekeeping, they're also going to do your laundry. So in independent living, that's something that you would pay extra for if you wanted laundry done, but in assisted living, that's going to be included. One misconception that people ask a lot is, well, I have a dog. Can I still take him if I'm in assisted living? Yes. The answer is yes. A lot of communities will let you do that because it's equivalent to your happiness. And that's pretty much, the utilities are all going to be included, the cable. Did I answer your questions? Do you feel like?
Christy, I want to jump into, would you also address that on assisted living, we often hear levels of service, generally 3 levels of service that affects the add-on cost for that. Or some communities do it a la carte, where I need this, and I only pay. I just want to say a word of advice or from people who I've known who've had this. They said those a la carte. Well, it sounds good. It can often really mount up. Whereas with levels of service, it's clumped together more. You want to expand on that?
Sure. So levels of service, like when you come in, you're going to have the basic level of service is going to be the escort to meals that I mentioned. Standby assistance, if you can shower, fine, but you just need somebody in there because you've got balance issues. But hey, hygiene, grooming, assistance with dressing. Sometimes buttons can be hard. Getting pants on can be hard. And medication management, meaning we're going to take your medicine. So we're going to let you know, okay, but if you don't want us to, and you can manage it on your own, you don't have to do that, but that's a service that's included in that package. And then the highest level at assisted living is going to be transfer assistance. So if you have trouble getting in and out of bed, that's going to be provided in the highest level. And hands-on assistance with bathing and hygiene and things like that. And then continent care and insulin management as well.
Mike, did that help you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If the resident had assisted living with the standard package, but needed a little occasional, let's say, therapy, like occupational therapy or even physical therapy, do you provide that, or would that be from one of the outside agencies that would come in and do that for us?
So that's kind of a twofold question. The Wesleyan in particular, we have our own home health program. And so physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and nursing assistance is actually covered under the home health umbrella. And that's paid for through Medicare. So if your doctor says, hey, Mr. Smith or Mr. Carden, I really think that you would benefit from physical therapy 3 times a week, that's a service that you can get through Wesleyan Home Health, but you can also get it through different home health companies. Scott and White has their own organization. St. David's has their own organization. That home health really is coming to you. So yes, you can get that in assisted living, and it shouldn't cost you anything more, especially if it's a doctor ordered physical therapy.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to, thanks, Mike. Glad you asked those questions. I'm sure they were on other people's minds too. Jim Norton, you had your hand up.
Okay, and I'm going to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Great.
Okay, Virginia, you mentioned 2 new places coming this year or next year soon. One the Hacienda, one the Graham. What type will they be?
They, and Christy, you can help me with this too. Grand is the one over there by by Academy towards Wolf Ranch. And I think they're opening, we think, in the summer, because things get changed. But anyway, they are independent living with assisted living integrated. And now I don't remember if they, do you know about memory care?
I believe they are providing memory care, Virginia.
Okay. So that one, and there, it's, anyway, so that is one that has the assisted living apartments are just within the whole overall community. The other one
over near Wolf Ranch, the big one over near Wolf.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. And the other one is the Hacienda over there, but where all that construction is going on behind Walgreens.
Behind City there. Okay.
I'm laughing because for years and years, we've seen the signs, independent living or senior community coming, and those signs go away, then they're back. But obviously it's coming now. And I think they've just beginning to have someone with their marketing. And I understand, I'm looking, Christy, to check me out, that they have independent assisted and memory care, I believe, all on their campus.
They do. I think that they're going to open that campus with independent living first and assisted, and then add memory later. But they will offer independent assisted in memory, very much like the Delaney, and that the Delaney also offers independent assisted in memory.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay,
Did
thank
that
you.
help you, Jim?
Yeah, it sure did. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for asking. Other people have questions, or any of our alumni have anything to share? You didn't know I just gave you a new title for some of you. Oh, Judy Mayo. Okay, Judy just put her hand up. Judy, what can you, let me see here, I'll get you. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, we're getting
Yeah, I
so.
was just wondering if there's like an average amount of time that a population stays in independent living before they either go to assisted or to family or something. I mean, is there just like a statistical average amount of time?
Judy, there is, and I will tell you that Georgetown statistical is different than the rest of the country. We all know living here that Georgetown is different, but the nationwide average is 4 to 5 years. Georgetown average is going to be 6 to 8.
Okay. And then is there any other statistics about, if you go to assisted living, is there statistics on how long you stay there until something happens?
I'm not as familiar with the assisted living statistics, but one from assisted living that I find very interesting that is true nationwide and is actually true in Georgetown is that the average age of people in assisted living is actually younger than the people in independent living. And I think that can be attributed to lifestyle and whether or not you're exercising. Because assisted living, for all intents and purposes, is a need-driven move. You need it, and independent living is more of a you want to. So I thought that was interesting. You would think assisted living would be older, and so I was surprised that they're younger than our independent living residents.
Yeah, good point.
I'll pick you up just a minute, Judy. I think that comes back to that living a meaningful, engaged
Absolutely
life with social activities, and the sooner people move there, or I think that we've talked about how we'll have a program coming up later this year about aging in place, and I can understand that sounds very attractive. Again, my soapbox is, what about your social engagement? What about interaction with other people and how important that is? So, okay. Judy, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about financial planning. That what if you have enough money to stay in independent living for 5 years? I mean, would that be long enough or whatever? I know you can't really plan that, but it's just something to think about. That how long can you pay those pretty high prices?
And that's why it's like walking a tightrope on deciding whether or not you should move. I mean, that's one of those factors. But I mean, Virginia probably has a better answer than I do. If we had crystal balls, things would be wonderful. But again, I'm going to be very much soapboxy too. I think independent living is the way to go. And I don't think you can put a time capsule on it.
Okay.
Will, are you still on with us?
Yes, I am on.
Okay. I'm not talking about getting into absolutely specifics with someone here, but I assume when people meet with you or people similar to you, that you are able, you have some kind of actuarial table, I know we do from financial investments about, okay, well, we think you're going to live another 15 years. We want your money to be, anyway, can you help people with that if someone needed information or wanted to have an analysis of their own situation? Is that something you do?
Yes, and I think we kind of, tend to use rule of thumb as far as, lifespan and plan to live longer than you would think. And then we also have, to that point, we have tools that we can kind of plug in various scenarios, what we call them kind of what if scenarios that give us some, calculation and projection of what our asset picture looks like, what our, based on our burn, what we call our burn rate. Where does that leave us at various ages and stages of life? And you can run different scenarios for, staying in your own home, downsizing your home, moving into a community where, your costs change, and it kind of will provide us some estimate of what we'd be looking at.
Okay.
Did that help, Judy?
Yep, thank you.
When you find a crystal ball somewhere that gives us all the specifics, please let us know. You could make a fortune out of that. But
I am looking, I promise.
oh, okay, well, let us. Hey, let Seniors Living Smarter be the first group to know about it, and you'll make a fortune.
Ma'am.
Okay. Any other hands up? I think. Oh, yeah, Cheryl. Oh, Cheryl, I think that's. Are you?
Yeah,
Oh, you're
I'm
new.
here.
Okay. Oh, and then I see Virginia Reed too. I'm sorry. Okay, Cheryl, what's up? Cheryl's
I
an
ju-
alumni. She survived the transition. She was on our panel
Yeah.
in November. Okay, Cheryl.
I just wanted to give a little bit of information to the people that are in that denial category that you mentioned. They don't want to move. They don't want to go into any kind of a facility. We live at the Wesleyan in independent living, and I'm going to include the other facilities here in town in this too. But if you are in denial, think back a week ago when we had the polar vortex.
Yeah.
And some of you possibly were scrounging through the pantry to find crackers and peanut butter if you had any to eat. And what am I going to eat for my next meal?
Right on my house, Cheryl.
Yeah, I know. And I just wanted to tell you, we live at the Wesleyan Independent in a cottage. And the dear people at the Wesleyan got in their golf cart and through that ice and snow and treacherous conditions, actually, they made sure we had food every single day. Even one day when the trucks didn't make it to the kitchen with food, we had a good meal. They made sure we had a snack in the afternoon. They took such good care of us. When the heat went out, we had 2 space heaters brought in so that we didn't freeze. They got our heat pump fixed right away. So you out there who are thinking about this move and you don't want to do it, think about situations like that. Yes, that was probably a once in a lifetime, we hope, occurrence, but other things can happen too. And when you're in one of these facilities, you have people there 24/7 to take care of you. And also, I wanted to say about the attitude of everybody. They want to help you in these facilities. They care about your safety and your well-being, and they will go out of their way to make sure that you are all right and taken care of. So if that helps anybody make the decision, good. And thank you to the Wesleyan.
And I want to also say, when a woman I was speaking with yesterday who's at the Delaney, she was going on the
Yep.
same. They were here for us. They brought us extra blankets,
Yep.
checking in, can we do anything for you? And she was just going on and on. You know, I think 99% of the senior industry, especially senior living, they're really passionate about serving seniors. And
Yes.
that's the beauty of it. That's the reason these are so important and so well received. So thank you for that. So Virginia, Reed, so last week was getting you ready to move to Michigan, but yes, okay. Virginia Reed, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I think I am.
Very good.
Yes, I'm in the midst of the whole thing right now in the moving, which is probably the scariest time because my house is full of boxes for estate sale and things to take to move and going through everything from all these years. But some of the people that were talking about the prices of independent living, if you get down and start thinking of all your house costs you every month and every year with property taxes, insurance, lawn care, and I had to pay $250 to have some branches moved from my yard, my tree that fell a lot. And when you count all that in, there isn't that much difference. Which I was amazed that I'm not going to be spending a whole lot more, but it's all going to be one time and not one time a month and not spread out all over.
And that's so important. I appreciate you sharing that. And in addition to the financial, there's just the emotional. you're not going to have to be worrying about who can I get to come move this limb out of my yard. You know what? Because the wonderful people at the communities take care of us, and that's the beauty of that. Anything else you had to share, Virginia?
No, that's it.
Okay.
I'm going to get there. I just maybe a nervous wreck before I get it all over.
Now, remember, our motto is, we want to reduce the stress. We're working with you in this case to get this all taken care of as easily as possible, and you will make it. You've got lots of great support.
But you have wonderful people to help me.
Well, we do.
With the estate sale and the moving. So they're doing a very good job for helping me.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any other raised hands. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank Christy very much for being with us, our other sponsors for being here briefly. That was their assignment today. And we brought Will in for something he wasn't expecting, but thank you. I think, Christy, you've given people a lot to think about. And as we've said often, it's not just the Wesleyan, it's the senior industry, and it's the senior communities, and not just the description of the community, but what's going on with us to make our decisions. So I'm glad we could share that. So you'll be getting a follow-up letter early next week and feedback. I know our last month's feedback went out very late as we were still learning to put some of that together. But I always like to challenge you with next steps. So what are your next steps, knowing we're all in different places? One is, I really encourage you to visit communities, and that's something that I can help you with. Like I say, I hope that very soon we'll be doing field trips again. And engaging your spouse, your family members in that tough conversation of, I want to be prepared. How, and when we're thinking about these communities, are we going to find the absolute perfect place? Probably not. Did we find the absolute perfect home when we bought our home? We thought we did, and we moved in, and we thought, oh, didn't know about this. But we have to be flexible, but we really encourage people to live the most fulfilled, meaningful, active life as long as you possibly can. And as Christy, I think, shared last month, you had one of your residents, 104, I think, who just did a tandem skydive jump. So anybody else, that's not on my list, but I'm glad that's on his list. So anything, but I know we've all got lots of active, wonderful seniors. And one thing I'm going to be starting in April, because I know I interact with several of you, have asked a lot of questions, and kind of how do we need hand holding to assure, like Virginia said, I know it's going to work. It's just, a little nerve wracking. Yes, it's going to work for you. But starting in April, I'll be getting some information out to you. I look forward to having a Downsizing Success Club. And so this will be separate from the seminars. I envision a monthly meeting, so we'll see each other, but to be more of a support group for people who are looking to downsize, whether it's this year or next or 3 or 4 years. But I just see a lot of need for that. So you'll be getting more information. And for those people who think it would be a benefit to you, we look forward to having you join us. Anything else? I don't think so. I'm just glad we're through the, whatever Cheryl called it, the polar vortex last week, or the, a lot of people, snowvid or something after all that. Our January snow was beautiful. That would have really been enough, but we got the bonus this year. So, okay. Feel free with questions, give me a call. You'll be getting follow-up information, and look forward to seeing you in March. March 18th, getting the most out of selling your home. The timing of this webinar is just quite interesting. Many of you are quite aware that our real estate market is just really crazy. Wonderful for sellers because the inventory is low and lots of competition to buy your homes. Buyers, it's a challenge because limited inventory and people outbidding one another, but Most of you, unless some of you may decide to move to a smaller space, a smaller home, which is an option. Most of you who would be looking to sell your home, it is pretty amazing right now, but it's also scary. We don't know how long it will continue. But anyway, we'll be sharing tips next week, next month, about really trying to get the most out of selling your home, which right now, the market's helping us with that. Any other words of wisdom? Okay, well, I want to thank you for being with us. Stay safe, stay warm, and see you March 18th. Thanks again, Christy. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, Virginia.